Hello again, everybody, with the incomparable John Dodds, whose legend continues to grow. You'll see and hear more of that in a moment. I'm Tom Piffins with our invaluable producer, Jason Ruck. Welcome to another edition of the MarquetteHoops.com basketball show. We are brought to you by Craig Cassidy is amazing, and so is Moonlight Graham. Modern dental benefits. Moonlight Graham, a proud sponsor of this show. Okay, you know all about Marquette's marvelous season ending at the hands of Michigan State in round 2, the second game. Talking about Marquette losing to Michigan State and their head coach, Tom Izzo. Well, somehow, some way, I talk about that legend of JD. It involves him going one-on-one with the Spartans coach before that Marquette game, the day before, in fact.
That's right. It was USC lost to Michigan State, and then Marquette beat Vermont. So Michigan State was going to play Marquette on the Sunday. So on the Saturday early afternoon, Tom Izzo had a press conference in Columbus. So I attended it, and I've attended 2,000 press conferences, I figured. And Pip, you've probably 25,000 in your tenure over the years. And you always want to be professional, and the announcement was made, please turn off your cell phones. And so the NCAA has this line that they give, and I could hear Izzo coming up the ramp to the stage, and I thought, I had my laptop on, I better shut off my laptop because it makes noise too when it turns on, and something might come up from YouTube. So I'm turning the sound down, and I put my phone right on my chair, and Izzo gets up there, sits down, and he laughs because he's been doing it for 35 years. He starts the warning about please shut off your cell phones or whatever, because he's done it so many times, he's heard it. So everybody kind of laughed at it. So he said, turn off your phones. And then he started. And then I got right into typing in the things he was saying about Shaka and Marquette. Yeah. So, wow, this is great. And then all of a sudden, about 5 minutes into it, the cell phone goes off, and you'll see exactly what happens right here.
And the cell phone is owned by John Dodds.
And everybody knew it, and the media was giving me the evil eye, and the NCAA, they could just, they're kind of pointing over there. There he is. Let's go. Who is this guy? And Izzo saves the day for old JD there.
You gotta love it. All right, well, here it is.
Back again. Good to see you. That's a good problem to have. All right, I see no new faces, so we'll skip the reminders and get right to it. Coach Izzo, opening remarks.
Put your cell phones away, no pictures, no cameras. Do your job for you.
Appreciate that.
Well, we're excited. We really are. And Marquette, they've done a hell of a job. And, I've known Shaka for a while and talked to him a lot over the years. And I'm impressed with the job he's done with his team to get a guard like he's got in Kolek that becomes the player of the year in that good league is amazing. They got the sixth man of the year in that league. We just played a team that I thought had an incredible guard in Ellis, and they had a sixth man of the year. So we're not dodging anybody, that's for sure. And this team brings more ball screens than maybe we faced all year. It seems like they're coming from the right to left. They're all over the place, and they do it very well. They've got some shooters. They got a center who is, his assist to turnovers is 2-to-1. For a center, that's off the charts. He's got 109 or 10 assists, which is unbelievable. So they're unconventional in their own way. They're different in their own way, and they're very good. And yet, I've been really pleased with the focus of my team last night in the walkthrough room today in the practice. It's something I complained about for weeks. I just did not see it all the time. And I think that's the beauty of the NCAA tournament, and maybe the beauty of playing on Friday and then getting a chance to play again. When you see all the upsets that happened, I think it's shocking to players. I think they never look at it like it could happen to them. And they've got a lot of good friends on some of those teams that it happened to, and especially for us with Purdue, because we're close as a staff, and I have so much respect for Matt. But our players know each other pretty well, and I think that hits home even differently. So I'm ready to answer questions and then play a game. And so I've said this. I mean, some of it's my fault, that I feel like all the things that are going on in the world that you don't, at the end of the day, as I said earlier this week, and I'll say it 100 times, you can do all the different things you can do. You can talk about kids have changed. You can talk about, you can do things different ways. See, somebody didn't listen to you. See, that means that
lesson learned.
That guy listens to me like my players.
Right.
Yesterday when you did it, so maybe you should.
Who knew?
Give the pregame
I figured
speech.
after 25 times I had it.
No, I'm just kidding. That's one of the good guys.
Tom Izzo and John Dodd's confrontation, but a friendly one, is brought to you by Moonlight Graham, the proud sponsor of the MarquetteHoops.com basketball show. Moonlight Graham, modern dental benefits. Greg Caston, you're an MVP. JD, again, just when I think your legend has gone to the zenith, somehow you find another level. That had to be a little bit of a tough feeling. What are you feeling inside now when you've got everybody, including the NCAA officials, looking at it?
Right. Oh, my gut was just, I can't believe I left my cell phone on. And I'm looking down. A friend was calling me to get my take on Marquette beating Vermont. But Tom Izzo saved the day for me. The funny thing is I was wearing my gold sweater, so he knew I was from Marquette when he looked down and saw me. I've met him twice, both at the El McGuire Center back, but this was 20 years ago, and there's no way that he remembered it. But out of the goodness of his heart, he kind of diffused the situation. So I'm always going to appreciate Tom Izzo.
He's one of those people where he's gotten to the stage where if you're a Marquette fan, it's like, no, you've had enough, man. We don't want to see you win again. But somehow, some way, and as you know, his teams play really tough opponents early, and they get tournament tested and tough. I thought this team, after beating Marquette, might go a little bit further, but he is an amazing coach, isn't he, in every way. His kids, as tough as he is on them, John, and you know this, they seem to love him and really, again, connect with it.
Yeah, he didn't seem as tough on them as he has been, but he was really appreciating their effort at the end. Their three guards were playing at a level that they hadn't played all year. But what was interesting about Michigan State and Marquette, there's always been kind of a tie to from Michigan State to Marquette. There was Mike Dean was an assistant coach when Tom Izzo started for Judd Heathcote. Then Jim Boylan, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, after he finished his playing career, his professional playing career, became an assistant coach at Michigan State. And then there's Tom Crean, who came in, and Tom Crean used a lot of Tom Izzo's opinions as a resource for building the El McGuire Center. Definitely do we need in that building? And then Dwayne Stevens was an assistant coach for Tom Crean, and he went back.
Whatever happened to Dwayne? Is he still on the staff? I didn't think he was.
I believe he took a job at a smaller college after being there for many, many years.
And of course, as Marquette fans know, there's the Joey Hauser saga, right, going from the Golden Eagles to Michigan State.
There's also Jay Zuloff had a twin brother, John, who went to Michigan State. And I'm wondering if Jim Dudley of the 77 team might have been at Michigan State when he transferred to Marquette. So there's seems to be some synergies between Michigan State and Marquette.
We talked earlier about you and Izzo one-on-one. Well, you went one-on-one recently in one of the MarquetteHoops.com basketball shows with Jim Boylan. As you point out, there are a couple of Jim Boylans. So what we're talking about was on the Marquette University basketball team that won it all for the late and legendary Al McGuire in '77 and eventually became a Bucks assistant coach. And John, as you pointed out over the years, you have done an incredible number of interviews, all wonderful, and you really got pumped up for Jimmy Boylan.
Yeah, Jimmy Boylan was maybe one of my top 5 favorites of all time. We had him for 90 minutes, and so we've used him for 2 full shows already. This will be the third. We'll use a substantial portion, but one of the things I wanted to ask him was I wanted to get his eyewitness view on the fight between Bernard Toone and Al McGuire at halftime of the first game down in Omaha against Cincinnati in that NCAA tournament run, because the team said that was kind of that's the thing that jacked everybody up. So I wanted to hear what happened, because I've heard several different tales, and he was right there with a great memory. And the second thing I wanted him to go over was the greatest shot in Marquette basketball history was Jerome Whitehead's shot at the end of the Charlotte game in the semifinals in '77, full court pass, very much like how the Russians beat the U.S. in '72.
And it was Butch Lee, right? And didn't Butch Lee play baseball in Puerto Rico?
He played basketball in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I remember basketball, but I thought he might have played baseball.
He was a great athlete at everything. But earlier that year, we talked to Jim about that in a previous episode. That Jim Boylan and I weren't together, but we were watching the same Olympic coverage from ABC at the time, and I think we were watching. There was a boxing match, like Sugar Ray Leonard. They had a really good boxing team in '76. And they said, "Whoa, there's something happening over at the basketball arena." And Butch Lee is this, and I think Frank Gifford said there's this guy named Butch Lee. He's from Marquette. He's got 35 points against Dean Smith and the USA team, and he's from Marquette. And I remember thinking, Butch Lee, he scores 12 points a game at most for Marquette, because he fit into the star system and he knew his place.
Right.
And then Jim said he wasn't surprised by that performance.
I remember one of those, you can remember where you were when. I was working TV in Syracuse, New York, in between shows, feet up on a desk, looking at the TV, looking at these Marquette uniforms, which again, being out east at that time, wow, they're kind of funky. And then all of a sudden you say the pass. Well, let's get Jimmy Boylan's words on that, because he was there firsthand. Jimmy Boylan, brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits. Moonlight Graham, a proud sponsor of the MarquetteHoops.com basketball show. JD and Jimmy B.
You get to the NCAA tournament, and your first game is in Omaha, and it's a rematch against Cincinnati and Pat Cummings. So there's a lot of woofing going on, and you're ready for payback. But then something happened at halftime that Bernard tuned and Al McGuire went at it, and we've heard various stories over the years. What was your take? Did you see what happened?
Yes, I did. I saw the whole thing from beginning to end. We were playing Cincinnati. I think we were down 3 at halftime, and just not really playing great. But in typical Marquette fashion, not only did we have Al a little tense and on edge, but we also had Maurice Lucas at the game. And at one point during the game, it was a timeout, Maurice came up, he was sitting behind the bench. He came around from behind the bench and came into the huddle and started screaming at everybody. Now, at the time, Maurice was on the cover of Sports Illustrated that year as the enforcer in the NBA. Now, he's in the huddle with us, punching guys in the chest and yelling and screaming, and you guys aren't playing, just going all crazy. And I was just like, wow, Al's just standing there watching, everybody's watching, and Maurice just gives this impassioned speech. So that was in the first half. Now, Bernard had missed a couple of defensive assignments. Al took him out of the game, put him back in. He missed another one, took him out. They were exchanging words, and Al, you could yell at Al. He wasn't, you could say stuff to him. That was allowed. You could do that. It was allowed. So we went to the locker room. It was just like the old Milwaukee arena where you had to kind of walk through the concourse to get to the locker room. So you kind of went through the fans almost to get to the locker room. It was the same way in Omaha. So we were in the locker room, and Al comes in after a few minutes. We've been sitting there. And he paces back and forth once, twice, and then he looks at Bernard, and he starts to scream at Bernard. And, no one calls me a MFer, just yelling back, just going at it with him. And Bernard's yelling, and then Al just hit him. Boom. And Bernard jumped up off the off his chair, grabbed Al by the throat. There was a training table. They went over the training table into like a curtain partition that they had to partition off the shower. And they fell into that. And then Rick Majerus jumped into the middle of it, and Rick grabbed Bernard in kind of a bear hug, pulled him off of Al, and then Rick took him and threw Bernard to the doorway to go out, to get him out of the locker room. And the two of them kind of bust through the door. And as I was sitting there, I could see the people behind those two lined up for their hot dogs and their beers and everything, and every head snapped around to see what just happened. And Bernard comes out, and Rick has them, and then then Bernard was outside, and then Al gathered himself, and he picked up a chair, and it was just pretty chaotic. And then pretty much halftime was over, and it was time to go out, start the game up again. And we went out there, and I think we beat them by 16 or something like that. We just came back, and it was such a surreal thing. But I know it. We were fired up when we went back out. We were fired up. I don't know if that's the way you're supposed to fire people up, but it fired us up. We went out and handled Cincinnati in the second half pretty easily. And I remember after the game, the media coming in and saying, "What did Al say at halftime to get you guys so jacked up?" And I said, you better ask Coach McGuire that. That's more of a question for him than for me. Because even at the time, in a time when things were different than they are today, as far as coach-player relationships and things that go on, I knew that this was like, I was like, wow, this is something. And so I figured better left alone for others to handle that situation.
So you get to the Final Four, and you're playing North Carolina Charlotte, which was a big unknown team, but they were incredibly long. It seemed like they had Cornbread Maxwell, the 6'9" center, but they had 5 or 6 Paul Pressies that were really long and lanky that gave Butch a lot of trouble, I know, early in the game. Difficult to get the shots off. Talk about the Charlotte game, if you could.
Well, you're absolutely right. Cedric was a tremendous college player, and obviously went on to have a great pro career also. But they had a lot of guys. They had a lot of 6'5", 6'6" guys that were long, and they were for that era, they were bigger than most guys. Physically they were bigger. They had more girth to them. So, it was tough for Butch because that was kind of Butch's game. And so, they had some guys that could go body for body with Butch, and kind of got him off his game a little bit. The one area for me personally that I found was that I was able to penetrate pretty effectively. I don't want to say easily against them, but I was able to get into seams and get into the paint and then make plays. I remember having, 2 or 3 drop-offs on penetrations where the big center would come to, stop me, and I'd dish it off to Jerome for, either dunk or an easy layup or something like that. So, I think the key for us in that game to stay in that game with them was the penetration that we had, and then it just came down to that famous play at the end of the game, and one that in today's game I think probably would not have counted with replay and all of that. I mean, Jerome got fouled. The way I saw it, Bo got pushed by Cedric. Jerome got fouled. on the dunk, but his hand was over the rim, and the ball hit the backboard, came back, hit his hand, and dropped it. So I think that would have probably been disallowed in today's game, but they didn't have replay, and we had Al McGuire. And at the end of that game, when that happened, Al was on the official immediately, and I remember, I believe it was Lee Rose coaching UNC Charlotte.
Yep.
Had a great coaching career. Remember Lee being there next to the referee, but not having the referee's attention. Al had his attention 100%. And Al just was, signaling that it was good and good and good and arguing and and Lee was kind of just there, and then the referee goes to the scorer and the official scorer, and I think what they were looking for was, did the ball leave his hand before the buzzer went off? And the official scorer said it did, and so then, boom, the basket was counted.
Yeah, that was, I think, the most important play in Marquette basketball history, and it doesn't get enough props because it was on NBC at the time, and CBS took over in '81. And when they show last-second shots, that one gets short shrift. But I've never seen a play before or since where, what did he get the ball off in time? Was it an offensive goaltending? Was it defensive goaltending? And then was he fouled? So Jerome Whitehead was at a Rick Majerus playground basketball camp at Park Lawn about 3 months after that, and he was there to give a speech to the campers or whatever. And I went up to him and I said, Jay, you know what I'm going to ask you, but all I want to ask you is, was it good? And he said, all I know is I let the ball go and they counted it, so it was good. And he wasn't going to worry about it. But that could have been. I mean, his hand was in the cylinder and the ball came back, but it also hit cornbreads at the same time. So would have been a very interesting play. Can you imagine if that play happened today? 10
with
minutes.
The camera angles and the scrutiny that they would put on that play. I would imagine that you'd be seeing that play in highlights from here to eternity. But like you said, because it was on NBC, because it was before the time of play and the slow motion stuff and the quality of camera work and the pixels and all that other stuff. So it's just one that does get. It is one of the greatest plays in Final Four history, and it doesn't get near the respect it should get.
Bo Ellis was on the show last year, and he had mentioned that in the huddle, they were. Al was checking, ran out and checked the height of the scoreboard, wanted Butch to throw it in, and the play was to Bo, kind of like a Christian Laettner Grant Hill play where they were trying to hit Bo. Is that what did you remember about that huddle?
Yeah, I remember that we were going to go and throw that long one to Bo and let him, either just take a quick jump shot or, whatever he could do. Al did his, I think he used to call it his elegantry stuff, where, he makes a big show out of everything. He walks down and looks up, and I'm just like, come on, coach, get back in the huddle. Butch is going to throw it no matter what, so let's go, So, and I just remember, and I actually was out of the game at the time because they had Bernard in there, they put Rosie in because Rosie was a great shooter, and whatever, should the ball get tipped or something, and Rosie, had deep range, so maybe he gets a shot off or something like that. And I just remember, being on the sideline watching that one, and but just the amount of action and then the amount of confusion and the waiting, and it was, like you said, it was, the most significant play and one of the most significant plays in Marquette history.
Oh, Jimmy Boylan and John Dodds, a great combo right there. And again, the key players, talk about Al McGuire, Bernard Toone, right? The long pass by Butch Lee and Jerome Whitehead, God bless him, putting that ball in there, and Marquette advancing to the finals to play North Carolina. And Marquette fans, especially those of us a little longer in the tooth, know what happened there, the championship for McGuire. So what are your thoughts about that, just briefly before we close here?
Well, I thought Boylan raised a good point. To me, that's the greatest play in Marquette history, without a doubt. The most significant, the most important play that's ever happened to the program. And I've never seen a play like that before or since, because did he get it off in time? Was he fouled? And then both of the defensive player and the offensive player had their hands in the cylinder, and it ricocheted off the board and hit both of their hands. So the question is, did it hit Cornbread's first and then Whitehead? And as Boylan said, can you imagine if there been a replay back then? I said we'd still be looking at it 40 years later trying to determine.
Didn't you say on a show not that long ago that you asked Whitehead years later, did you get that shot off on time?
Yeah. I mentioned to Jimmy during the segment that I saw him at a Rick Majerus basketball camp, and we were doing power moves, and I think I've never felt more inadequate as a human being than being a post for Marquette High School doing power moves against Jerome Whitehead. And I thought, Jerome Whitehead had a waist at about, I'd say it's 28 inches, and then it went up to 46. It was like an upside down triangle, and the guy was amazing. But I said, Jay, and you know what I'm going to ask you, because you've been asked this 100 times, and this is probably end of June after the end of March shot. Was it good? And he just said, I let it go, and they counted it, so it had to be good.
I can relate to 2846, but invert, right? Hey, you've got an awesome website, too, and why don't you share that with the Marquette fans, our viewers? Sure, we appreciate it very much.
Sure, it's marquettehoops.com. We archive all of our shows at the site, just in the left-hand margin on the front page. We also have a newsletter. If you'd like to be included on it, just drop your email address. Sometimes it takes two times to put it in there, but we'd appreciate that. And if you could send notes to any of your Marquette friends with a link just to say, if you want to enjoy a program like this, we have them all there right at the site.
Great appreciation for John Dodds, and of course our producer, the marvelous one, and Jason Ruck. I'm Tom Pippins. This is the MarquetteHoops.com basketball show. We can't do it without Craig Paston and Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits. Moonlight Graham, a proud sponsor of this show. It is always a joy to be with you, everybody, on My 24. We'll see you again soon. And for all these aforementioned people, they're great. I'm Tom Pippins. God bless and go Golden Eagles.